So we'll make a start. So first of all, thank you very much for joining us. This is about our 5th webinar coming from the Algarve in Portugal. So online today we've got a few of the Ideal Homes team. So what we'll do first is we'll introduce ourselves. So we'll start with Angela.
Hi, I'm Angela. I'm the director at Ideal Homes. I've been working for the company about 5 years and living in Portugal for the last 14 and a half years.
Perfect. And then we'll introduce Charlie.
Hi everyone, I'm Charlie. I came on holiday here a year ago and then just decided to stay really. And I'm a real estate agent here in the Algarve.
Perfect. And I'm Chris, I'm the CEO of Ideal Homes. So I moved to Portugal about 12 years ago. And my background was working for tour companies and started about 9 years ago now, 10 years ago. So, and then we've got Christina sat here as well. So Christina's our mortgage broker.
Hi,
she's going to be answering some questions and telling you about mortgages. So first of all, we're going to start with a question and answer session. We've got a list of questions that Angela wanted to run through that are commonly asked questions when it comes to getting a mortgage in Portugal. So if you'd like to kick us off, Angela.
Okay, so what's the maximum amount that banks in Portugal will finance up to?
Okay, so most banks will finance up to 70%, and that's to non-residents. However, there are one or two banks that will do up to 80%. But it's important to know it's 80% or 70% of the value of the property or the purchase price, but it's the lower of the two. So if a property was purchased at 200,000 euros, even if the valuation came in at 300,000 euros, they'll still only lend you 70 or 80% of the 200,000 euros.
Okay. And how many banks do you work with?
So at the moment, we're currently working with around about 6 different banks. So some are faster than others. So the fastest bank, if you get all your paperwork in on Monday, you'll get an answer by Thursday in principle, and they can do the deeds 2 weeks later. And that's a bank that lends 70%. The bank that lends 80%, because there's a lot more applicants for an 80% loan, so they're a little bit slower. So normally from start to finish, you're looking at between 6 to 8 weeks to start the process. Usually they take about 2 weeks to answer, and then usually you do the deeds 4 to 6 weeks later.
I do believe that the rates are very good.
Yeah, so I mean, I keep an eye on mortgage rates across the world. I mean, at the moment, the only thing that's happened, I mean, if we're talking about current times right now, and we've been keeping an eye on the banks and asking them questions, is the bank that does 70%, they lowered their interest spread from 1.1% to 0.98.
Okay,
so
thank you.
Just under 1%, which is really good.
Very good. And can you get a mortgage in say the UK or somewhere else for a Portuguese property?
You could release equity. So imagine if you had a property in, I don't know, the UK or the US, wherever you are, you could go to your local bank and you could say, can I release money out of my, my property that I've got? It's usually not the best rate and the best way to do things, but the UK bank wouldn't lend on a Portuguese property, if that makes sense. So you are better off taking the mortgage in Portugal. The rates are lower, and the terms are a lot longer. So they will do mortgages either up to the age of 75 or 80 years of age.
What requirements do they look for?
So I'm going to pass you over with Christina for this one. So, and then she's going to explain in more detail.
So the banks need to see some sort of income, whether it be employed or self-employed or a pension. So what they do is they take your income, which is your expenses, any credits or loans that you've got, including the finance in Portugal, cannot exceed 35% of your income. In terms of documentation, if you're self-employed, they'll need your personal documents and the documentation of the company. Things like 6 months pay slips if you've got 6 months bank statements, credit reports, tax returns. You need a Portuguese tax number, which the lawyer can get for you. And yeah.
And what role do you play in this, Christina, for the client?
I'm the mortgage advisor, so I make sure to make sure that everything runs smoothly, from sorting out the documentation, making sure that we've got everything, and applying to all the banks. We apply to all the banks so that you can get the best term, the best rates, the best interest rates, and the best terms and conditions overall.
And you speak both fluent English and Portuguese?
Fluent in English and Portuguese. Correct.
Okay.
That's because she's South African.
Do you have to pay insurances on any kind of insurances when it comes to mortgages?
Building insurance is mandatory with all the banks. One of the bank that finances 80%, they require life insurance. Once we've done the deed and the property's in your name, you can cancel the life insurance. All that will affect is the interest rate by 0.25%. But the banks that finance 70%, life insurance is not mandatory.
Thank you. And so can you agree an amount, like be qualified before you actually find the property?
By filling out an inquiry form sent by email, we'll be able to do the affordability. If you've got a purchase price in mind, we can work it out for you and send you a simulation. If you're not sure on what you should be looking at, then we can work that out for you.
Yeah, and we've also got a mortgage calculator on our website as well. So you can go in there, play around with it, look at the interest rate. So, I mean, the best interest rates we're doing at the moment are less than 1%. The only thing where it gets a little bit harder to do is when you look at buying something called a touristic development. And that's where the license is slightly different. So it could be a property, perhaps that's on a golf course, and it's a touristic development. The banks there will only look at lending 75%, and the interest rate increases to 1.9 to 2.2%. So that's one thing you should be asking when you're looking for a property. Is the license a residential license or is it a touristic license? If it's a touristic license, it means that the property can't be rented out by yourselves. It can't be rented out by our rentals team. It has to be rented out by that particular company. And that's why it affects the mortgage amount that you can borrow and the interest rate.
And what about if you buy land?
So if you buy land, with land, you're looking at, you can borrow 60% on the land and then 80% on the build. So if you was to buy a plot of land for, using round figures, 200,000, they would lend you 120,000 on the land. Then you put a project in to build a villa. Let's say the project came in at 80,000. They'll lend you 80% of the build cost.
Okay. And how does it work if you're buying off plan? So
if you're buying off plan, I mean, it depends on the developers, but most developers ask for a 30% deposit. Okay. And then, I mean, not a lot of the projects in Portugal are off plan nowadays. So they generally get the structure up. There's nothing more than, I would say, a year and a half away. But what we do is we pre-qualify you for the mortgage. Then you put down the 20, 30 or 40%, depending on what the developer's requirements are. And then at the end, you take the mortgage. Okay.
Okay, so can I put an example to you? So for instance, say I was 70 years old and my husband was 60 years old. How would that work for us getting a mortgage?
Well, you'd say you're a toy boy. But yeah. But yeah, I'll pass this one to you, Christine.
The banks will work out the affordability by the oldest candidates. So if you're 70 years old, then you can take a mortgage for 10 years. Or because it will only be for 10 years, the monthly repayments will be a lot higher. So we could also advise that you only put it in your wife's name or a child's name or a sibling's name, and you can add yourself to the deed after.
So that comes on to something that's called using a mortgage host, which some of our clients choose to do. So they might choose to buy a property, but the term, if they're, say a client was 70 and they can only get a 10-year mortgage and they're borrowing 300,000, the repayments are going to be around about 31 to 33,000 euros per year, which is quite a heavy sum. But if they put that in their children's name and they got a 30-year mortgage, that would bring the repayments down to a lot lower, at least a third of that.
And is there any fees with having a mortgage?
Yeah, you do pay a bit more. So normally the buying costs in Portugal, we say, I mean, on a property that's 200,000, normally we'd say allow 6.5%. That'd be your IMT tax, your stamp duty, your lawyer's fees, your notary fees, absolutely everything, 6.5%. But then if you add a mortgage to it, you've got a stamp duty on the loan amount that you take. So the stamp duty is 0.6%, and that's on the amount that you borrow. So again, if you borrow 200,000 euros, if you brought for 200,000 euros and you borrowed 160,000 from the bank, the extra fee would be 0.6 on 160, not on the 200. And then the other fees.
The bank fees are around 700 euros. So you've got the preparation for deed and you've got the evaluation. So once the mortgage is approved, the bank contracts an evaluator to evaluate the property. That's 239 euros. And you've got the stamp duty 0.6,
Yep.
and the bank fees. All it's around 700.
I mean, one thing, well, some of the banks is because they want mortgages, is they're saying we'll pay the valuation fee. So that's starting to come off the cost.
What are your fees, Christina?
The service that we offer. The service that Ideal Homes offer.
Yeah. So if you go to a normal mortgage broker, which we are effectively a normal mortgage broker, they're working to get you the mortgage. We're helping you with, hopefully you choose us to purchase a property. And that's what we're really hoping for. But we do this service free of charge.
Excellent. And can you have a mortgage if you're going for Golden Visa?
No. I mean, what you could do is you could get the Golden Visa. So if you was getting it up in Lisbon, which I'm a little bit wary of at the moment, because I do, they did talk about cancelling it for a while. You would put down the 500,000, and then in 2.5 years, when you're allowed to remortgage, you could go for the remortgage. If it was in the Algarve, you'd only need to do the 400,000, and then after 2 years, you are allowed to remortgage. So you could go for the remortgage, but the remortgage is at a lower rate, so you can only remortgage at 65 or 70%.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to pass over to Charlie now, because we've had lots of questions come through while we've been talking, and see if Charlie can tell us some of the questions for us to answer. Okay,
so Jeff, I think we will email you individually about yours, because you've already submitted to Christina. He's asking why his has taken longer than usual, and I think it's because he's trying to build a house, so I've said that it might take longer. Is that right?
With that, the mortgage on the land is easy to do, so the 60%, because imagine that piece of land is 200,000, the bank automatically know you can borrow 120,000. But what you have to do is you have to have a project that's approved. If you haven't got the project approved, it's really hard to get the mortgage. And normally, I mean, at the moment, I'm doing a few projects for clients, and the architects are quite fast, but the architects are actually in the town hall. I mean, one project's taken 1.5 years. So it can take a long time to get that project approved on a new build.
And then Alan is saying that he's in the UK and he buys distressed properties. Basically, can you buy and then get the property revalued and refinanced after the refurbishment? You
can, but they have a law in Portugal which is a minimum of 2 years. So that does slow things down. And I did this myself. I found a property. Christina arranged the mortgage for me. I brought a villa for 420,000. Because I'm classed as being Portuguese, you can tell I'm English. I'm originally from the north of England. But I'm classed as being Portuguese because I pay taxes in Portugal. I've lived here a long time. The bank lent me 90%. So I only had to put down a 10% deposit. The interest rate was fixed for 1%, minus Euribor, because Euribor's on a minus. So it's really an effective rate of 0.87%. I then went out and refurbished the villa, saved all the receipts, and now I'm going through the process of remortgaging and taking some of that money back out. So you can do it, but there is a 2-year waiting time.
So Caroline's saying, who would need to be the beneficiary on the life insurance that some banks require?
Okay, I'm going to pass you over to Christina.
If you've got life insurance already in place, the bank would have to be as a beneficiary, and they'll ask you for your life insurance documents there to see if they can use that. Sorry.
With a residential mortgage, can you then apply for a consent to let, or is it a whole new application?
No, so there's no such thing as a buy-to-let mortgage in Portugal. This question comes up quite often. And I think it's more for UK buyers than anywhere else. So here they don't mind if you're going to rent the property out or not. There's no stipulation the same as the UK. So simply you get a 80% mortgage, or if you become Portuguese, a 90%, and you have to have a rental license to rent the property out. But the banks don't pay any attention to that. They don't care if you're going to do that or not.
And we've got a question from Matt. How does the 75-year-old age requirement affect a mortgage when you buy a property jointly? So if someone's 36 and someone else is 66 and they get a mortgage together, does that affect anything?
Yeah, they'll go off the oldest applicant. So if it was 75 and the bank said that, then it would be 9 years. And then simply if it was up to the age of 80 and it was the bank that did up to the age of 80, then it would be 14 years. Unless you use that mortgage house, like we said.
So ideally, you should put the deposits together and just buy the property in the youngest person's name?
Yeah, that would be a solution.
So Dylan's saying, are you finding that banks are taking longer due to the COVID-19? And I've said that we've got a few that are really fast at the moment because we're pretty much the only real estate company that's been open the whole time. So
yeah, so I mean, I did an application. This was for some friends of mine last week. We got all the paperwork in on the Monday, and they had an answer by the Wednesday. So that was really quick, and it was a nice, simple process. They managed to get the credit report themselves because you have to manage that yourself on Experian. So you can sign up to Experian. You put in all your details. It's a free service. You just need to remember to cancel it afterwards. They printed off all their own bank statements, everything. We sent it to the bank on Monday, to one of the banks for 70%, and we got the approval by the Wednesday. The other 5 banks we work with, they haven't come back to us yet. So some banks have been slower, some have been faster.
Tom is asking, can you take a mortgage after you've bought the property?
You can, but not for 2 years. So as soon as you do the deed and it's put into your name, you have to wait 2 years before you can take a mortgage.
Can you lock the rate when you get pre-qualified on new construction that is 18 months from completion?
Ooh, that's a tricky one. So let me just run through that. So you would apply for the mortgage now, get approved, but you're not going to take the mortgage for 18 months' time. I don't think you can. I mean, let me come back to you on that one. If you can make a note of that and let me call round the banks after this, and I'll have an answer by the end of the play today. But I don't think you can. I mean, you can certainly lock the rate after you've got them, you know, when you've completed on the property. And they do fixed term rates for up to, you know, 5, 10, 15, and even 20 years. But not before you do the mortgage, no. I don't think, but let me check.
Elaine is asking me, sorry, can you confirm again when you need a touristic license, please?
It's not that you need the touristic license. So the government brought in a regulation probably about 12, 15 years ago that said you either build under a residential license or a touristic license. If it's a touristic license, it's a touristic project. It's a bit like buying into a hotel scheme. There's a few developments out there that are like it. Personally, I find it less attractive because you're tied to their rental agreement, and their rental agreement is usually that they keep 40% of your income, but they do pay all your bills and things like that. You only walk away with 60%, so it's a little bit more tied. But when you're buying the property, you need to ask the lawyer. You need to say, and the real estate agent, they should know as well. But just before you sign the contract, it should state in there whether it's a residential development or a touristic. I would say 95% of the Algarve and about 85% of Lisbon is built under a residential license and not a touristic license.
From Simon, can you clarify the 35% lending income criteria, please? I have a UK mortgage as well as expenses and looking for a Portuguese mortgage.
Okay, do you want to pass it to Christina for that one?
So they take your income and any credits that you've got or any loans like business loans or car loans, existing mortgages. They take your loans, including the finance in Portugal, cannot exceed 35% of your income.
So as an example, if someone was earning, say, €3,000 a month and they were paying €1,000 a month on a mortgage, then it'd be the 2,000 they would take into consideration. And it would be 35% of the 2,000, which would be €700, which means your mortgage could be €700 per month in Portugal.
Jeff is asking, what do you think the effect of our government statement today that we will not be allowed to go abroad on holiday this year? So I think he's asking, what do you think is going to happen? But we know that there's already, from the 22nd of this month, there'll be daily flights from London to Portugal every day. So
yeah, I was speaking to someone about this morning who's got he's got a business in the UK, he's got a business in Portugal, and I said, it really comes down to if they're going to enforce the 14-day quarantine back in the UK, because then if someone takes a week's holiday in the Algarve, as an example, and then they fly back to London and then they have to self-quarantine for 14 days, that means they have to take 3 weeks off work for a 1-week holiday. So it depends. It comes down to the individual. I mean, if they work from home, you've got your own business, that might not matter to you so much. But yeah, we just have to wait to see what Boris Johnson says from the UK and what everyone else is saying from worldwide. I mean, the main thing to remember, I mean, Portugal, we're lucky, we're very lucky, we're blessed that we haven't been hit so hard with the virus. It has affected, but there hasn't been as many cases as some other countries and areas.
So Kim is saying, are there properties that you can buy with 100% financing where the rental income pays for the mortgage and expenses? So bank repossessions?
The simple answer to that is no. The bank won't want to take the risk that they're in for everything. The way to arrange 100% finance would be to take an equity release at home. So again, if we went back to the 200,000 property mark, the way you would do it is, imagine you had a property in the UK worth 300,000 and you only owed the bank 100,000. You could go to the bank and you could say, look, can I borrow 50,000 out of my UK property? And then come to the bank in Portugal and say, can I borrow 150,000 in Portugal? And effectively that becomes 100% finance because you haven't had to use any of your own savings, but you've had to do an equity release back home and take a mortgage in Portugal. So that's the only way to do it. In the banks you do get some bank repossessions around, but they're very few and far between. And it's usually because there's something wrong with them. Like with my house, mine was a bank repossession. I thought we could move in there in 3 to 6 months, and in the end it took 14 months. I thought we could budget for spending around about €200,000 fixing it up and repairing it. In the end, we went to about €330,000 because there was a lot of problems. We had to put in complete new electrics, complete new plumbing, and basically take it back to the bare shell. We have ended up with a beautiful house at the end. If I'd have known it at the beginning, I probably would have just gone out and got something a little bit easier and a little bit simpler to do. But it depends. It's everyone's, individual. Some people come to Portugal and they just want a 1-bed apartment, bolt hole, and lock up and leave. Don't want to rent it out. Some people want big, huge villas, €3 million. I mean, the biggest finance we ever did was a villa where a client brought it for 3.5 million, and they took a mortgage at 2.7 million. And that was just as easy to do as a client borrowing 300,000 for a marina apartment in Algarve. So yeah, it comes down to the individuals.
So Alan is saying basically that Villamora properties have become very expensive. What could we suggest in the nearby areas? So I think as this is more of like a property related one, I'll leave my email and I can start suggesting other areas. But obviously Villamora is next to the Golden Triangle, so you've got loads of other areas that are good. I mean, Lagos, Tavira and East Algarve getting...
Lagos, sorry, Villamora has become very expensive. I remember during the crash just after 2011, 2012, you could pick up quite a nice property for 200,000 euros. They're now reselling at the 350 mark. And the new build that's going on in Villamora, a nice new build 2-3-bed apartment, you're looking between 450 and €1 million now. So it has increased dramatically. But it has been coming over a long time. I mean, we've had a slow increase over the last 8 years. It's not been like a big jump in price. And there's just not enough new build going on at the moment.
Can you use limited liability corp to buy property and get mortgage?
I've never come across that. So
LLC?
It has to be in your personal name. Or an LLC. So that's for like an American term. My gut feeling is no, but again, are we able to put that? And we'll ring the banks today and find out and answer that question. And
yeah.
On an individual basis.
James is asking, what are the practical points to apply for a mortgage? Do I need a local bank account, have a TIN number? Any other points to be aware of?
So, I mean, the first process would be to apply with all of the banks. Then when you've chosen which bank you're going to go to, then it's advisable to open the bank account with them. But that's a really simple process. We even take you to the bank ourselves, introduce you to the local branch manager. You get a really good service in Portugal. So it's not uncommon to get the local bank manager's mobile phone number. So you're able to text them and just, yes, it is a really good service. But yeah, you'll be taken into the bank, meet the bank personally. They'll help you set up your mobile banking app in English on your phone. They'll show you how to use the cash machine. They'll show you how to pay with multi-banco, all your bills and things like that. So it's a really good service. And we'll help you get the NIE number. It'll be one of the recommended lawyers that we recommend. And it's a really low cost. It costs about €12 to do.
Yeah, it is weird in Portugal, the banks here. I mean, it's like they get to know who you are. They know your name when you walk in, because I always go in with a different problem every month. Tom is saying, are there different conditions and rates for investments and flipping?
No. So the mortgages over in Portugal are not very complicated, but there's no different rates for, if you go to them and say, I'm going to buy 2 properties, I'm going to flip 1, it's still the same rate.
And Richard is asking, I have my fiscal number and can move to Portugal this year. Am I able to get 90% local mortgage?
No, you'd have to be in the country for a minimum of 1 year, either employed or having a business. But yeah, you need that 1 year first.
Or what about a 1-year rental contract?
No, you'd still need to be in the country for 1 year and be Portuguese and be classed as being Portuguese.
Alex is saying, and of course, the 35% income calculator will include your equity release payments?
It would do, yeah.
Do you see the banks softening or hardening their lending if the market softens in Portugal? Market is softening a bit here and more stock is anticipated now due to the pandemic. Will the banks stiffen the loans?
No, I don't see that happening. I mean, the banks have only just come to this rate. So if you was applying for a mortgage a year ago, you'd be looking at 1.5%, which that seemed fantastic at the time. But 3 years ago, you was looking at 2.5, and they would only lend 70%. 5 years ago, it was down at 60%, and they would charge you an interest rate of around about 4 to 5%. So at the moment, I can't see. I mean, if there was loads of new development going on, but there's not. You know, like in Villamora, there's 3 or 4 new developments. Lagos, 3 or 4. I mean, the biggest development here is usually around about 60 units. So it's not like other countries where, you know, there's big, huge developers coming in. A lot of them are local Portuguese builders who finance the developments themselves. So there's definitely not an oversupply. Therefore, I don't think the banks are going to toughen up.
Harish is saying, with recent rate cuts, would you say the rates are better in the UK than in Portugal?
I mean, I took before, because I'm actually looking at buying a little house in Cornwall, just as a little bolt hole. I know I sell property worldwide, but Cornwall's where my brother lives. And I was just having a little look through this morning. And as an expatriate in the UK, I can only get a 60% mortgage, is what I'm told. And the interest rate's going to be around about 2.2%. If I was still living in the UK, I think I could get a rate of around about 1.7. That's what I looked at this morning.
And basically from Kim, she's asking that with the current pandemic, do you think people will start switching from short-term rentals to long-term rentals?
No, because short-term rentals brings you in a lot more income, and you only pay, so in the first year you only pay 4% tax, the second year 6%, and on the third year and moving forward for the life of the property, you only pay 8.75% tax. And if you do long-term rentals, you're going to pay 28% tax. So there's a big encouragement for you to do short-term rentals. So I can see that. I think people will continue.
And even if you rent out the property for 3 months of the year, that's pretty much covering what a long-term rental would pay for a whole year.
Especially in that June, July, August, September period. I mean, if you get 12 weeks, that's usually the equivalent of 12 months rental.
Can a UK limited company purchase property in the Algarve with finance?
It has to be in your personal name. So they'll use your dividends and the company documents, but it has to be in your personal name unless the business is registered and trading in Portugal for a minimum of 2 years.
Tom is saying, when you want to go invest flipping, is it better to buy on LDA and not personal?
So, I mean, there is a way where you can actually, but this isn't going to help you with a mortgage. This has to be a cash purchase, and you can set up a IMT-free company. So the first property that you buy a small property or a piece of land, something that is going to cost you €10,000, and you have to buy that first property, and then after that you can set up an IMT-free company. So if you're then buying a property that's again €200,000, the IMT is usually around about €7,000 on that. As long as you buy and sell that property within 2 years, you don't have to pay the IMT on it, but you wouldn't be able to finance it.
1 year local gives you 90%, is that guaranteed? So if you're here for 1 year and you've got the fiscal number, can you definitely get up to 90%?
It depends on your personal circumstances, as long as you meet the affordability rate, but it comes down to personal circumstances.
Bob is asking, any Brexit impact currently on the values of the property or the mortgages? I'm not too sure, but...
Well, not on values of the mortgages and not on values of the properties. There's some good deals to be had at the moment. There's 1 or 2 things that have come up where, client circumstances are changed. I mean, one of the first things we did was we carry around about 900 direct listings that I direct with Ideal Homes that are individual people wanting to resell their property for whatever reason. Some people looking to upgrade, some people to, they've used the property for 20 years and they've decided, to move back. Some people looking to, downgrade or downsize, and they're going to go from a big 5-bed villa down to a 2-bed apartment. And we spoke to a lot of them owners, either via email or on the phone, and only around about 15 of them came up with some great deals. So probably one of the best deals I can think of at the moment is a 6-bedroom villa very close to Algarve. It needs a little bit of refurbishment. It's an older style property. That would be worth in the region of around about 500,000 euros. You could pick that up today at, I think, around about 360,000 euros. Spend 40 to 50,000 on it, and then you could either reflip it or rent it out for 2 or 3 years on short-term rentals, or you could do the long-term as well. But short-term would bring you in a better income, and you could use the property yourself, and then look to put that out on the market at 545, get an offer accepted at around about 525.
So Lisa is asking, do you have contacts in the Lisbon area to help us find a property? Yes, we do, and I can leave my email below and then help you find a property. Mark is saying, my grandparents were born in Portugal, both are deceased, I live in the US. Are there any advantages for me getting a mortgage or citizenship in Portugal?
So grandparents, that's more of an immigration question. I would put them in touch with Ricardo, the lawyer.
Yeah.
It depends what passport you've got. I mean, if you haven't got a Portuguese passport, then I'm guessing a bit, but I don't see that there would be any benefit. I would put that question to Ricardo.
Mm-hmm. Bob's saying, I'm a late joiner. What are the basic terms of a mortgage for a non-resident? If we can just go over it, maybe we can make a document, send it out to everyone so that they've got it.
Yeah, so a few highline facts are 80% of the property purchase, and that bank's pretty easy to get. But I mean, I'll give you an example. We've got 40 mortgages in at the moment, and 37 of them are with the best bank that can lend 80% at an interest rate of 1%. The rest, for whatever reason, they're going with the other banks. So that bank that is doing the 80%, and they're really good, they've got 6 members of staff working on just under 40 of our mortgage cases. So that's why they've been a little bit slower. But yeah, 80%, 1% interest rate, up to the age of 75 or 80. Try to go for a residential property rather than a touristic property. Otherwise, it brings it down to 75%, and the interest rate goes to a minimum 1.9. And yeah, and that's the top highlights of the mortgages.
Harish is asking, what is the definition of a short-term rental in order to qualify for the 4, 6 and 8.75 tax? I think that's just below 3 months, isn't it?
Yeah, below 3 months, and you have to have the rental license, which our rentals department, we cover that for you if you want us to. The rental license itself costs 250 euros, and basically the council come out and inspect the property. They check that you've got a nice, safe property, safe property. The boiler's up to standards. You've got clear notices of, if there was a fire, you have a fire blanket. But yeah, as long as you get that rental license, then that's available.
I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong. I have a registered Unipersol in Portugal that has earned income and paid tax. What percentage of loan would be an option, 80% or 90%?
80%.
Okay, and then also, are you aware of any circumstances where the seller will take a second mortgage equal to the amount the bank will not finance?
Can you repeat that, sorry?
I think you've got to have proof of, are you aware of any circumstances where the seller will take a second mortgage equal to the amount that the bank will not finance? I think he's asking if you can go to a second bank and take maybe the deposit money that you needed.
No, because what would happen with that, it would be registered with the Bank of Portugal, and it'd be on the land registry, so that wouldn't be allowed.
We've got a bank repossession question. Should we just have a chat about the bank repossessions?
Yeah.
What's available, how to get them?
Yeah, so I mean, what I like to do if someone's really looking for a bank repossession, first of all, you can't be fussy. We get a lot of people saying, Chris, can you find me a bank repossession in the Golden Triangle? I'd like a villa worth $1 million and I only want to pay 700,000. And they're very few and far between. Like the biggest bank repossessions, and we've still got a few available, are in the convent in Tavera. So, and that was a convent built in the 14th century. It was converted into apartments and townhouses. And if you look at this online, it looks beautiful. But sometimes when you get there, you have to remember that it's an old convent. So they've really struggled to kind of make use of the space. So it's a little bit dark inside. I mean, it's brand new, but the developer unfortunately went bankrupt and handed it back to the bank just after completion. And it's because he had to spend so much money on things like they couldn't put the air conditioning units on the wall. They had to hide them in the wardrobe and just lots of little things. But the convent still, I feel, is good value for money. I mean, you're getting a 2-bedroom property. You've got a lot of history involved. It's got 2 swimming pools. It's got an on-site restaurant. And there's units available there at €270,000. Sometimes, though, the bank, that particular bank, are very slow. I mean, to do a mortgage with them, sometimes it's taken up to 5 months. Sometimes it's better to buy the bank repossession from the bank that's got it, but don't take the mortgage with them and go for the mortgage with somebody else. And that speeds up the process. A couple of other little bank repossessions. I missed out on one in Albufeira that was up for 145. Needed a new kitchen, 2 new bathrooms, little condominium, small swimming pool. I would have paid full price for that because it was definitely worth, in my eyes, 180. But somebody got there first. You need to, with the bank repossessions, you need to be very brave because you have to put down 10% deposit straight away. The bank won't do a reservation and hang around or anything like that. So you have to put down a 10% deposit straight away. It's a little bit like an auction back at home. Comes out on the market. Like when I brought my house, I brought it within 30 minutes. It was up for 420. I offered 380. The bank said no. I said, okay, I'll pay full price. So you have to be prepared for that. And the banks, like I know around the corner from our office in Villa Sol, I know there's 3 houses that are coming up at the moment. They're going to be worth around the 600 mark. The bank are looking at putting them on the market for around the 500 mark. I was in there doing a valuation the other day. 2 of them have swimming pools. The middle one doesn't. They're 4 bedrooms, all of them, with underground parking. So they're going to come on the market very soon. Again, 80% finance, around the 1% mark. And I'm hoping that the bank don't be too silly with it and they go in at around the 500 mark. And they'll be good value for money. But if you would really want to, it's best not to chase after a bank repossession. It's best to put your name on our bank repossession list. And then as they become available, let's present them to you. That's a much more sensible way of doing it.
How long can you fix the lowest rate for?
How long can you fix the lowest rate for?
So the 1% rate, that's variable. If you was to go to a 5-year rate, what's the rate for 5 years?
It's around 1.75%.
Yeah, about 1.75 for 5 years. I mean, my advice at the moment isn't to fix the rate. I haven't got a fixed rate mortgage. I don't see that, even before the coronavirus, I didn't see the rate, the Euribor changing anytime soon. So the spread is always fixed. So if you fix a spread at 1%, that bit's always fixed. It's the Euribor that can go up and down. And at the moment, all signs, and especially after the virus, all signs are going to say it's going to stay in a negative. But please, that's just my opinion, not, you know what I mean?
Back to Alex's question before, those rates are much better than the English rates currently, as no surveys are being done currently. Only new applications are being written from the desktop valuations at 60% LTV.
Yeah, I think the UK market, they seem to have gone against the buy-to-let investment route. I was doing a seminar a year ago, and you could have got a 75% loan just by putting a simple 25% down. It seems to have changed. I think the UK is really, they've given up. tax relief for landlords. You have to put it in a company name now. Over here, you don't have to do that. So I think we're in this special sweet spot over here where the Portuguese want you to buy, the banks want to lend you the money. Yeah, they want to do it in a safe way. They're not going to offer you 100%, but they're still offering 80%, which seems to be better as an investor than most countries. And they're offering them tax incentives for short-term rentals because they want tourism.
So Kim is asking what tourist town near the sea offers the best value when buying an income property. So any kind of property queries, I'll leave my email and I can start telling you what area is best for rental investment, because it depends on what you want and if you want to sell it in 5 years, how much you want to make. So
I would tell people, I know you want to cover that, Charlie, on an individual basis, but it's good just to give you an overview. So value for money at the moment, the place to look is the Eastern Algarve, and I would look in Cabanas. So Cabanas is a small little fishing town next to Tavera. It's very family friendly. They refurbished the waterfront, spent about €3 million doing all the new boardwalk, and you can still get a nice little property in Cabanas for 150,000, a little one bed, and the rentals you'll get between 18 and 22 weeks per year. And it's low value, but it's low income, but it's a good value location. But it depends, because on the downside, there's no beach. There's a little town beach. But the upside, if you don't mind getting the boat across, for less than €1, you get a little boat and you go out to Cabanas Island. And the islands are beautiful. It's one of my favourite places to explore in the summer. You can just go across there. It's not as tourism-y. But yeah, it's a good location. And there's about 40 restaurants and bars down there. There's Benamar Golf, where you can have a round of golf for €45. So if you compare it to Villamora, it's about 25% of the cost. But it's not Villamora. It's not got the big, beautiful marina and all the facilities. It's a quieter location. But then if you want rentability and you want to maximise your returns and get a great location, I would look at Lagos, because you've got the motorway that's opened up the area. You're only 45 minutes away from the airport. You can get the train all the way down there. They've recently built a brand new train station in Lagos as well. You can buy up at the back. You can buy in Boa Vista. It doesn't really excite me that much. It's a little bit far out of town. You're paying a lot of fees on the golf course. I always say it. I'm not a big believer in buying on a golf course, to tell you the truth, unless you play every single day. But for investment, I wouldn't recommend buying on a golf course. I would move away and try and get into the town or close to the beach. So if you want to get close to the beach, I would look at Porto de Mos Beach. And that's a really good location, and it's one of the nicest beaches in the Algarve. Or have a look down in the town in Lagos. I mean, if you walk in distance to the pedestrian zone and close to the marina there, you're picking properties up for less than the price of Villamora, bigger properties as well. The developers down there, there's 2 cousins, and they've been building there for 30, 35 years. And they build really high quality. You can get a 2-bed apartment that's got 130 square meters out inside with a big 40 or 50 square meter terrace. It's like a competition at the moment, who can build the biggest terrace in Lagos. And there you'll get some great rental returns. And we've got clients ourselves that are achieving 33, 34, 35 weeks rental return. It does take a little while to build up to that. But if you're going to get 30 weeks rental, you don't need 30 clients for that. You probably only need 22 clients, because some people will stay more than 2 weeks. But Lagos is definitely the #1 place in the Algarve, in my opinion, for investment right now, because they're not building more hotels. They're building a few more apartments. They're not building huge developments. And it's been really put on the tourist map, and it's a nice place to go.
So Jeff is asking, could we get a joint mortgage to obtain a larger sum, which would be for about 7 years due to my age, and then remortgage after 5 years in my daughter's name when she has a bit more income?
Well, that's a finger. The answer would be yeah, but then I think it would have to change names. So we'd have to find out the legalities about that. In principle, yeah, as long as the affordability is there after 5 years. So that could work, but that would be, I just want to check the legalities with Ricardo for that one. And if you have to pay the buying costs again, because that would be a sting in the tail.
If I'm not working and too young to receive US Social Security but have considerable savings, will I be able to get a mortgage? I could technically buy something using my savings, but I'd prefer to get a mortgage.
Could you repeat that one again? Sorry, Charlie.
Yeah, I'm sorry if anyone can hear my dog barking in the background. She's crying. She's about 6 weeks old. She's a puppy.
No.
So if I am not working and too young to receive US Social Security but have considerable savings, will I be able to get a mortgage? I could technically buy something using my savings, but would prefer to take out a mortgage. So she's too young to receive US Social Security, but she's got money in the bank.
The answer to that is anybody can get a mortgage. Okay. This would be a different bank and a different product, and it would be more a sorry. It would be more that there's a bank out there that if you brought a property again for 200,000 and you wanted to borrow 100,000 euros, what they would want to see is you put 100,000 euros in a savings account, they lend you the money back, and then after 2 or 3 years, you can take the money back out of the savings account.
This is quite a direct question. So typical cost to refurb a kitchen and bathroom in a typical 2-bedroom apartment in Villa Sol. I think we can cover that in a different video. Or let's go through it. Got a lot of questions.
Yeah, so Villa Sol, if you went to IKEA and brought a kitchen, you'd be looking at around between 5,000 and 8,000 euros. If you got a local builder in, you might get it for less. If you got an architect involved and he wanted to make the most amazing kitchen, you'd struggle to spend more than 25,000 euros, but you could spend that. But I've done apartments in Villa Sol myself personally. You're probably looking at around about 7,000 for a kitchen. For the small ensuite bathroom, you'll be looking at 3,000 to 4,000, and then the bathroom with a bathtub and you put a nice spa bath in there, you'll be looking at about 5,000.
Okay, Andy joined late. Have you covered loans for construction? Yes. And then also, could we repeat the closing costs and just explain what is included in the closing costs?
Okay, so back to loans for construction. So land, if you see a piece of land, we can get you a loan on the land at 60%, and then we can get you a loan on the approved project at 80%. Buying costs based on 200,000 euros, if it's a straight property, you'll be looking at around about 6.5%, and then with a mortgage, I would say add 1% on top, so 7.5%. It'll always be under that, but I'd rather you allow for a little bit more. If we say 7.5% and it comes in at 7.2%, you'll be happy. If we said 7% and it came in at 7.2, you'd be unhappy. So I'd say allow 7.5% on a 200,000 euro property. And if it's a 400,000 euro property, you'd probably allow, including a mortgage and all your lawyer's fees, every single bit of tax you've got to pay, and notary fees, everything, you'd allow a little bit more and you'd allow 8%. And that would cover all your closing costs. The thing to remember as well, if you're buying off plan, and let's say you're buying in a development and it's going to be ready next year by May next year, you don't pay any of the buying costs until the end. So you put down your 20, 30 or 40% deposit, the constructor's building, then you pay the buying costs at the end. Another thing to cover when buying off plan. So in Portugal, there was never many big cases of people losing their deposits, like in some countries when we had the big crisis. So they never made it mandatory that you had to have a guarantee, like a bank guarantee. But you can ask the developers, you can say to them, look, and it's a good way of testing to see how strong the developer is and if they're, if they're safe to buy with. is, will you provide a bank guarantee? Because it only costs around about €400. And if the developer's got enough of their own money into the project, the banks will offer the guarantee. So, and it'll be banked. I mean, the best bank to get a bank guarantee with is Caixa Geral, because they're the government bank. So I would always recommend that if you ask the builder and say, you know, I'm going to put down a 30 or 40% deposit, and can you back it up with a bank guarantee? The cost is only €400. The worst thing they say is, yeah, I can, but you'll have to pay for it, and it's €400. You would always cover yourself for €400 if you're putting down €120,000. So it's worth doing that.
So questions about rental and Villa Sol. Simon has asked how many weeks rental likely on a 2-bed apartment in Villa Sol, please. Our next webinar is actually going to be on rentals. So if you haven't signed up for that one already, then it would be good to leave your email, or yeah, we can add you to that one. What is the...
Oh, let me answer that, because Villa Sol, I love the resort. We've got you know, a beautiful office here. We've been here for 7 years, and it was a step up moving here from the old office. The only thing I don't like about the main part of Villa Sol is the condominium fees are quite high. This is something to really keep an eye on. I mean, the condominium fees in Villa Sol, including the security services, you know, the heated swimming pool in the centre, they can become, you know, the same as a mortgage. They can become €400 or €500 per month. So that's one thing that it has a downside to it. So I'd just be wary of that, is factor in the condominium fees. Always look for a, you know, that is going to be a cost, and if you're not getting enough rental income, or it's going to at least take a chunk out of the rental income if you buy for investment, and then all of a sudden you've got to pay a mortgage of £8,000 a year and condominium fees of £5,000 or £6,000 a year. That really does, and that the condominium fees never usually go down; they only usually increase. So I'd always keep an eye on
that. What is the equivalent of council tax in Portugal, and how do the authorities decide what homeowners are charged?
So it's like a magical question. So I had my council tax through last week, and on the villa that I own, it's €400 a year, and they basically say the fiscal value of the property. So it's always on the fiscal value, but a good indication, a good kind of, I mean, on every individual property, we can tell you, we can say this is the IMT tax of this property. But a good indicator would be 0.25% of the purchase price. So if you buy something for, you know, for every 100,000 you spend, you've got to think it's going to be around about €250 a year. But until you actually pick out that particular property, and we can backtrack it, we'll find out for you. But council tax isn't a big thing in Portugal. I mean, the most expensive council tax I know on any individual property is usually around about €800 for a year.
I think some of the other questions are just, you know, I've left your email to Jeff. He says he'd love to speak to you because you've got so much knowledge. And the rest of the comments are just that we're doing a great job. So I think that's all for the questions.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is, I mean, doing a mortgage webinar, we can give you a brief overview, but what we really like to do is speak to you on a one-to-one basis. That's not me, that's Christina. Sorry, I should have brought some water upstairs. And because the mortgage is a very personal thing, it's down to the individual. So you'd speak to Christina on a one-to-one basis. If it's property related, it's yourself, Charlie, or myself, and I'm happy to answer any questions. But to get more in depth, you really have to do it on a one-to-one basis.
Any more questions, or should we leave our emails below, and then the next webinar will be about rentals?
Good idea, Charlie. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope you've all got a lot of information out of that. And like we say, just contact us with any more information that you may need. And please join us on the rental webinar. That's the next one that we're going to be doing. So thank you. Have a good day.
If anyone needs it, my personal email address is Chris, so CHRIS at idealhomesportugal.com. And my mobile number is 00351 918 055 119. I'm free for the next 3 hours. So if anyone wants to give me a call, you can call me on WhatsApp. I'm happy to go for anything. So just let me know.
Can we also put Christina's email on there, Charlie, as well? Christina at idealhomesportugal.com for if you want a package sending through. So we have mortgage packs, and Christina will be able to just send you one of those through by email if it's an early stage and you don't want to talk to us personally at the moment, but at least you'll be getting that information as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you everyone for joining us. I hope this was probably the most nervous webinar we've done because we want to get things right for you. We want to answer all your questions. So thank you to my team for joining us, and thank you to everybody else for joining us. Anything else we can answer, just get in touch. And the next webinar will be covering more how to find the perfect rental property, how to manage it, what are the steps to take, even down to how to furnish it, and how to get the best rental returns.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.